What's up, and welcome back to another episode of InSights, the podcast built to help you with your recruitment and digital marketing. Joined today by Steve Gibson. Steve, how we feeling, buddy?
Good, Brad. How are you?
I'm good. Seeing you again, right? We just saw each other a week or so ago in Florida, a little bit different now. How's everything been, buddy?
Yeah, it's been good. We should have recorded it in person.
That would have been fun.
And we just talked about how hard it was, right? That'd been unique. The show that we actually know each other, and then we do see each other from time to time.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm doing good. It was a good meeting. It's great. Always great to get together with the whole team and kind of talk about different perspectives and things. So yeah, it was good.
I enjoyed it, man. Florida was warm. It is a balmy, where are we at here? It's like a balmy 12 degrees in Buffalo today.
Jeez, really?
Yeah, man. This has to figure itself out. I'm over it. I'm very over it.
But I don't think it's going to figure itself out, Brad.
I know it's not, but it needs to.
I don't know what to tell you.
I'm so tired of running in the cold. It was nice to run in Orlando when the weather was nice. It was nice to be outside when it was nice.
Yeah.
Golly, man, we had like an ice storm the other day. It was just raining ice, and it was just freezing immediately.
That's like Missouri weather. That's what we get. We get ice.
Yeah. Was not a fan.
Yeah, no, it's worse than snow. I don't know if it's worse than 6 feet of snow, but it's worse than snow.
It definitely not worse than 6 feet of snow, but I will say it made things difficult for a little bit here.
Where are you at on the line for Buffalo? Because I know there's like this line that gets a ton of snow. Okay, so you don't get like the copious amounts of snow.
Well, I used to. So my wife and I, we both grew up in the South Towns. We went away. We both went to separate schools in college, came back home, back to Buffalo, and then moved to the North Towns. So where that line is, we're like 10 minutes past it.
Okay.
So my parents will get 3-4 feet and we'll have sun here.
Wow.
It is just a world of different, but
crazy.
Worth it for me.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. I'm struggling here, Brad. So if anyone's watching this on camera, I'm doing my best to stay as still as possible because there's this running gag right now where Brad will send me these ridiculous clips of me with my hands just all over the place, or I'm dodging the camera. So I'm trying to stay as straight and as staid as possible. So if we get a little bit ramped up, I'm sure it's going to fall apart, but I'm trying.
Steve is very animated. If you've watched any of the other episodes on YouTube or any of the clips that we put out, Steve's an animated speaker, and I like that about you. So don't sit on your hands, but yeah, let's try to dial it back maybe just a little bit. Steve, before we get into segment 1 here, I actually want to do almost a pre-segment. I'm working through 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman. Real good book, long story short, basically about how the average person has 4,000 weeks on this great planet.
Okay, that's depressing.
It is when you think about it that way and you actually chunk through it and realize it is. But it's also very, very uplifting in a different way. But I was reading through last night and something kind of sparked me as a marketing idea. So maybe we even turn this into segment 1. I don't know. But let me kind of read you this quote.
Okay.
For example, you hear it said that attention is a finite resource. In finite, it certainly is. According to one calculation by the psychologist Timothy Wilson, we are capable of consciously attending to about 0.0004% of the information bombarding our brains at any given moment. I read that last night.
Okay.
And again, friends, what that quote is saying is psychologist Timothy Wilson says that we're able to consciously attend to about 0.0004% of the information bombarding our brains at any given moment. I read that last night and immediately said, I want to talk to you about this on the show. And you know what? This isn't going to be a pre-segment. It's going to be a segment. I think this screams marketing messaging needs repetition, consistency. It needs everything that major brands are doing. Because we at any given time are just seeing so many different inputs that we're only processing such a small detail. Hearing something like that, what does it mean to you?
I mean, initial thoughts are how much stuff then am I perceiving at once to only have to be able to only perceive that little, right?
Right. And I think where the thought is going is like, well, shoot, my roof could fall on my head. I could stub my toe right now. My water could spill. My computer could die. There are so many inputs, right? A car just drove by, a bird, right? Like there's so many things that are happening, but I am tunnel visioned right now on just talking to you.
Right. But that's only the 0.004%.
Right.
So that's wild that they even think that, okay, so within that, so it is a powerful 0.004% because you are engaged in the conversation.
Right.
So there are ways then because to me initially it's like, well, that's just then it's impossible. Why even bother kind of concept? What am I supposed to do with it? But, if we can engage on a one-on-one conversation and that's included within that 0.004%, then that means there is an opportunity for us to be able to cut through that noise and be able to captivate or be able to get in front of our audience in that small margin that's there.
Yeah.
So interesting. I don't know exactly, what does that mean from the perspective of the type of information or type of content or the ways that we're doing that? Does it have to be, does it have to be in a one-on-one conversation? I would ask that question because that's the only way that you're able to fully engage what I'm doing, or all those little messages that are popping up and all the little ads that I see and all the information I'm consuming. Does that somehow culminate in me being able to know who you are or know what your brand is? And I just don't perceive it. Is it unconscious? I don't know.
It's a lot. And I might not even have the answer here that I'm looking for. It just stopped me in my tracks when I read it. And I'm thinking through, okay, let's say you're a staffing firm. I actually just had this call last week. A staffing firm wants to mail an email newsletter quarterly. They think they're bombarding their customers by if they send monthly or if they send twice a month.
Mm-hmm.
By this data, or by at least partial data, quarterly is not enough at all. And we know quarterly is not enough. People are forgetting about you before that next send. And that was a really good conversation to be a part of. But I think for me, it screams consistency, branding, a consistent message, repetition. We know it takes 17 to 20 touches for a company to know, or a prospect to know your company exists.
Right.
Because there's so much noise in the world. We need to make sure that we're doing every single thing that we can from a marketing standpoint to surround our potential customers, our potential candidates, if we want to go candidate side, recruitment marketing side, with the right messaging at the right time.
Right. To me, I'm trying to think about brands that I've allowed into that 0.004%, right? And things that I think there is a barrier there. If I allow someone into my consciousness, or I've allowed them it's a different type of perception. Like I'll get a text from, let's say, a coffee company. Fellow is a coffee company brand I bought a couple things from, and I have some of their stuff. And so their text comes up, and even though I maybe don't read every text I get from them about an advertisement, I do look at it and I will say, okay, now I'll perceive that it's there. So it becomes part of my consciousness and part of what I'm involved with. And so maybe there's a level of, we have to break through that barrier, having people let us in to kind of that sphere of influence. And then they can become aware of what we're offering them at different times. And I don't know if I'm saying that exactly.
Does that make sense? No, we've talked about it here a little bit. I don't know if it started on the show. I know Haley from our team has said it a few times, but basically surround sound marketing. So how do we have this surround sound marketing that just encompasses a prospect? Just like the text messages that you get. Fellow company, I get them from Built all the time, the shirts that I like to wear a lot. I get it from a workout supplement quite a bit too. I'm not ready to buy, but they want to be in my world so that when I am ready to buy, I know to go back to them. Because how often are you buying a shirt? You're buying a workout supplement maybe every 30 days, every 60 days, depending on the serving size, right? So they know, okay, 60 days from now, we need to be in Brad's world because we know he just bought on February 10th at time of recording. We need him to buy again in April. And he has 1,000 choices. And from a staffing and recruiting standpoint, you might not talk to another candidate for 6 or 7 years. If you make that placement and they're happy in their role, you lose them in a sense. So they need that surround sound marketing because, I mean, think about the attention that you have after making a placement. If you're not following up with that person, you're completely forgotten about. Right.
Oh yeah. No, and I think it's about, so like with that shirt brand, like you're not upset that they're texting you probably twice, 3, 4 times a week. Right. That's not something that I know. It's a whole lot. I probably get a text every single day from that company, but it doesn't bother me because I know at some point I'm going to buy something from them again. I trust them.
They've earned your trust.
They've earned my trust. So
that's exactly right.
I think the positioning needs to be not like that client you brought up is not something about, well, I'm annoying them, so I'm going to back off my frequency. It's what can I provide to them that's going to want them to want my frequency or accept that frequency I'm able to send to them. Because if they're able to do that, even though I'm hitting them even daily, it's not going to be something that annoys them because they know that I'm there to educate them or bring them value or offer them something that they're going to get at some point. And so even though they see it and maybe don't engage in it or act on it right away, they know at some point they want to leave it there for when they're ready.
Yeah, I love that point. I love that you got us there. I think almost like somebody who calls you or texts you, right? You get a phone call from a family member you don't talk to often. It's, I could get back to them this weekend. I can get back to them in a couple of days. And then you have somebody who calls you, and by the second ring, you're picking it up. That's almost the same with this marketing messaging. It's how do you build their trust so that the individual on the other end doesn't feel like you're bombarding them or you're interrupting them or you're inconveniencing them. They want to see that message. I think we actually figured that out quite a bit over here at Haley with our Smart Ideas newsletter, which is a huge testament to David and the marketing team and what they're doing with that newsletter. We're mailing every single Saturday, which was a high frequency point for much more than we were doing. We were mailing monthly for our Smart Ideas newsletter. We changed the style of the newsletter to where people now want to read every week is basically David writing an article or penning an article, or somebody will hop in and do one. I've done a couple. But because the content is so trustworthy and is high value,
right,
we've earned the trust to be in your inbox every week now. And I think that's important too.
Yeah. And the consistency in sending that information out, right? You look at how many years Haley's been doing this, and people will look at Haley Marketing and they'll say, well, of course, you guys are a marketing company. Of course, people are doing this. Of course, you know how to do this. Well, but it took you guys how many years to consistently build that up and build that value, build that trust, showing up in person, giving talk, providing content, delivering on the services that you guys said you were going to deliver on. And so it's not an overnight trust that's built there, but it is finding out what that voice is. For you guys, for Haley, it was building content that is going to help recruiting and staffing firms be able to level the playing field with larger organizations, right? And be able to give them an opportunity to be able to establish the brands, reach more clients, reach more candidates, and grow their businesses. So you found what that voice needed to be and the content that needed to be created for that. For recruiting firms, it's going to be different. For staffing firms, it's going to be different for each firm. But you have to find out what that is and then start producing that and be religious and consistent about it. So that way they let you into that sphere of influence. And so that way they can begin to able to see, you could break through to that 0.004% of awareness of what it is that brand is trying to develop. So
Steve, you got us there. Again, friends, if you're interested in that book, it's called 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman. It's about time management for mortals. I'm enjoying it. It's taken me a long time to read, Steve. I'm realizing now with 2 kids, the finding time to carve time to read is just non-existent. I'm much more of a podcast listener now.
Yeah.
And that's right. Like, I've listened to Oliver Burkeman on multiple podcasts talk about this whole concept, but I'm only on page like 60 after a month because
isn't that nerve-wracking to know that you've wasted 4 weeks of that 4,000 trying to read the book? Like, don't you just like see? Do you have I have like hash marks now. I'm going to put hash marks on and just like start freaking out and like be paranoid that as I'm wasting these weeks or not wasting them, but watching them tick away. Gosh, that's depressing.
It is.
Motivating for the right person.
It should be motivating, right? In the sense of, I don't need to get too into it, but there's a pretty good concept of, think about somebody in your family, right? How often do you see them a month? How often do you see them a year? Okay, well, know that if you have 4,000 weeks and now you're breaking that down to, okay, I don't have 8 more years with them. I only have 17 more visits with this person. And it enables you the thought to rethink what 17 visits with this person means. So that you're not sitting on your phone when you're with them or when you're out with your friends. And if I only have 20 more visits with this group of friends, great.
Wow. Yeah. So you just take advantage of every moment that you have.
Exactly right.
And really, I mean, reality, you bring that to clients. I don't want to, and I know probably other topics to get to, but even just in the sense of, if you have, even when you're on the conversation with them, or the meetings that you have with them, or even just when the touches that you only have a finite number of opportunities to be able to reach those people. So that's interesting, even in that sense, how do you get the most out of every touch that you have, or every conversation, or every engagement that you have with a prospect or a candidate as you're trying to grow your firm? I think it makes you think about how you need to get as much information into that as possible, or make that impact or make that impression in the way that maybe it's just, well, I'll come back around them. You may not. It's very finite in the way that you have that opportunity to be able to engage with them.
Exactly right. All right, man. Let's get to another topic here. This is one that you actually brought to the show, the hidden cost of doing nothing. We typically find from a marketing standpoint, from a business standpoint, everything has a dollar equated to it, right? If you want to have some sort of BDM effort, there's going to be a cost associated with that.
Right.
You, though, had talked about the cost of doing nothing? What is the opposite side of that? What is it going to cost your organization to not invest in BDM or recruitment marketing? Walk us through where your head's at in that topic.
Well, so, I mean, the idea of the opportunity that you're wasting, right? So we can stand here and we can do nothing. And I can continue to do business as I've always done. And that's great. And I can make X amount of dollars, right? I'm a big biller. I'm a big producer. Maybe I'm a recruiting firm with direct hire. I work a single desk. It's always just been me. I'm able to go out. I'm able to bill, let's say you're really good at what you do. You bill 7 a year. You're able to make the living that you want to make or have always made. And that's just always kind of been consistently there. But if you could implement an engine or implement some procedures or a marketing plan, some sort of even process in what it is that you do to be able to be more efficient in that, how much money are you leaving on the table with not working any harder? Or maybe you can work less hard and be more efficient in the way you work. And so you're just the idea and the concept of, sure, you've made $500,000 this year. So sure, you made $100,000 this year, or you billed that much this year. But how much did you not make because you weren't implementing new tactics? You weren't evolving. You weren't growing with the industry. And so I think that's kind of that thought that I had on that. What are we missing out on because we're not willing to be able to expand and grow with what we're trying to do, whether it's even in our sales tactics and our processes, or even just into our daily marketing efforts?
Yeah, I'm trying to quickly find a quote that I've been resonating on, not because of the quote, because I want to make sure I get who said it right. The thought is that you're 1 year of hard work away from everyone thinking you got lucky.
Yeah, I saw you post that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that one kind of stopped me in my tracks too. I can't find who said it though. And that's going to bother me because I love to give credit on the show. But I think that's the same concept. It's how do you work hard to make sure that you're doing everything right that's moving you forward? And in a lot of ways, I think in the staffing industry, we realize we've done a lot of things right to get to this point. We've become a $10 million organization because of everything that we've done. Another thought, though, is that what got you here might not necessarily get you there. It might not get you to 100 million. And we need to have the courage to say, listen, yes, we did a lot of things right to get to this point, but we need to take some necessary steps to improve that.
Yeah. And so that quote, found it on your LinkedIn. It's Sahil Bloom.
Yes.
Okay. And, and the goal, so I think a lot of times it's because people leave things on the table or leave opportunity on the table because it doesn't align with what maybe they perceive as their goal, right? Or they say, well, I'm not trying. So again, like going back to that guy that's making, billing and cleaning up and, billing $750 a year individual desk, his goal may not be, I don't need to make any more money than that. I'm very comfortable in what I have. So I'm not wanting to make any more money. So, okay, great. So that means, you don't try to market. You don't try to partner with, you don't try to put efforts in place to be able to grow your business because you don't need more resources. But resources is just one facet of what it is that we all do, right? Within that. Money is great. And that's wonderful. And that's why we all work every single day. But if you could improve your life by having more time with your kids, if you could work less and make it more of a lifestyle business, or if you could partner with better clients so it's not as stressful, what is that goal that you may have, even though it's not more resources, but what is that goal that you may have that then you could say, if I can put this into place and implement this processes, I could partner with better clients. So I'm making less placements, which means less stress and better relationship with those clients, a better lifestyle. And so yes. I think finding what that is that resonates with you for the reason you want to be able to enact that marketing or enact that plan or that process. It's not always just about making more money. And I think there's a disconnect there with some people that I talk to. Well, Steve, I don't need to make any more money. I always have the business I want. So I don't know if there's something on that you want to elaborate on.
Well, there is. I mean, Sahil Bloom is the author of the 5 Types of Wealth. So it's interesting that's where you're tying this into. I haven't read the book, but I've listened to him on quite a few podcasts because I saw the quote and got interested into what he's all about. But that's all about how wealth isn't money. There's a lot more to that. It's interesting to me. I had a great call. This is a long time ago. Exactly what you're saying though. I was talking to an executive recruiter. He said he basically makes 10 to 12 placements a year and that's it. He doesn't want to make more. He knows that he could, but he's happy. He takes a couple of vacations every year. He works when he wants. He doesn't work the weekends. He has a schedule that works for him. And the 10 to 12 placements a year fuels the life that he wants. And I think that's important, right? We can all chase this proverbial pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Right.
I'm slowly learning money isn't everything. Still pretty young and trying to figure all that out though in the first place. So I think that just comes with time. But also, it's interesting to me, right? I think we as business owners, as marketers, even we need to understand what we're after. What is the goal? What are we in search of? What is that finish line look like? And then ultimately, how do we get there? The hidden cost of doing nothing, though, speaks to me a lot. I struggle with knowing that marketing can play a key factor in growing businesses. And I think I struggle with then articulating, well, what if you don't do this? What are you leaving on the table, right? What else are you missing on, right? I know right now it is incredibly difficult to close new orders. It's very hard to find new clients. It's very hard to get to 17 to 20 touches for a company to know you exist. Why would you not then want to deploy the marketing that will get you there? I understand there's a cost associated with it, but the cost to not do it is higher because you're not going to grow and scale your business.
Right. Well, I mean,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, but to that point though, if you're happy and everything's great, fine. Then we don't have to do this. We don't have to grow your business. If we're just maintaining a level of water here, great. Then you might not need this.
So here's the thought though. So what in life, I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think of something we can name, but what in life that stays sedentary, does not move, that stays the same, grows and evolves, or is able to stay the same? Is there anything in life that stands still that's able to stay the same?
My immediate reaction is no, because if it's not progressing, it's decomposing.
Right. So you look at like, even just if we're standing on a piece of ground, right? You can use, if you want to use like standing on a beach. If you're standing in the same place, that tide's coming in, it's eroding that sand, it's bringing new sand in. You could be there for 10 minutes and your feet are going to be much more buried than they were. You look at anything in life, anything that we're doing, if we're not growing or progressing or moving forward or moving in some direction, we're moving backwards. We're eroding. We're decomposing. And so that concept of if you're not putting in new processes, if you're just always doing the same thing you're doing, there's no way that you're going to always continue to grow or your business, or even from a revenue perspective, or accomplishing whatever the goal that is. And so, to me, it's just that idea of this has always worked. And so I'm not going to change what I'm doing. So I'm just going to continue to do nothing. Eventually you're going to do nothing long enough that you're going to be forgotten. Those competitors that are growing, those people that are evolving, they're going to leave you behind. You're going to find yourself buried in the sand.
And at that point, what's the cost of catching up?
You won't.
Right. There's value in consistently going to the gym 5 days a week. You don't catch up by going one day for 24 hours.
Right. Right. It's not going to happen.
So then the cost of doing nothing is going to compound on itself.
Right. We can all, I mean, fitness is always a great example, right? You just, you can look at these guys that, I'm approaching 40 and so I try to stay active. I try to do new things. Like this year, I think I've talked about, I've started swimming, right? Like you're trying to reach that marathon. I started swimming. It's something different at low impact, but a different type of workout.
Yep.
And I'll look around, you'll see guys that are my age or just a little older than my age. And you can tell you can see that, okay, they stopped trying on this stuff. And at some point when you're 45 or you're 50 years old, the momentum to get that back in action and even just have the drive to do something about it again, because the more lethargic you get or the more stage you get, the harder it is to be able to restart. And anything that we do within our business and growing and evolving and developing, whether again, it's in marketing or our processes or whatever we're doing, the more you let that slip, the harder it's ever going to be to get back. Even
full alignment.
Just the drive of that. I mean, that mentality of always being better than you were the day before, that's a really hard thing to catch and hold on to.
Yeah. It is. It is. And I don't know where we go with that, but I mean, I've said the whole thought of getting 1% better every day is really how I live. That's my philosophy is how can I in key areas just get 1% better every day, because the compounding impact of that, I mean, it's easy to get lost in the years when you micro focus on the days. But if you look back at a 5-year progression, because of the habits that you've created day after day, it's easy to see a 5-year span or a 10-year span compared to just day to day. Right. And I think when we think about the cost of doing nothing, we as businesses need to sit down and really think about that. Can we afford to not put world-class marketing in place? Or do we need to think about, listen, if we continue to not do this and we see our competitors are doing this, are we missing out on opportunity? I mean, we just said that of all the inputs that are around us, people are only recognizing 0.00%. I mean, it's harder to become one of those inputs if you haven't been an input for a long period of time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
You want to do one more or you want to get out of here?
You want to answer the guy's question you had?
Yeah, let's talk about Matt Lopez. So this was in ASA Central, and he said, I have a question for anyone who might be able to help me. I manage social media for a healthcare staffing agency. I find it a lot easier to manage our social when it's geared toward potential candidates compared to when it's meant to be for facilities and possible clients. What's one way we can distinguish this and help drive more traction from facilities who are in need in searching for a staffing company? Any help would be greatly appreciated. Eagerly await responses. So again, Matt Lopez from ASA Central. Let the record show, this is all I know. I don't know what kind of facilities. I don't know if he's targeting, assisted living or hospitals. So we could kind of talk in generalities here. And I know at Haley, we like to get super, super specific into target audience and lasering in on that. And it might make this conversation a little bit difficult, but let me just sort of set the stage. For background, I just have the question. I don't know the company. I don't know what specific type of staffing, and I apologize for not grabbing that.
Yeah. Well, and this is your wheelhouse, Brad. I mean, this is like where you come from, right? From the digital marketing, social media side, coming up in those kind of from through those ranks. What's your initial thoughts? What's your gut?
So my initial thought, Matt, is we need to figure out who our target audience is. I just articulated that I don't know who his audience is. He needs to figure out who his target audience is. Is it healthcare facilities? Is it assisted living? Are you doing home care? Healthcare staffing is massive, we'll call it buzzword. What kind? Who are you placing, right? And then on the other end of that, okay, who are the decision makers? Who are you actively targeting? Who is Steve Gibson? What does Steve care about? What are his challenges? What are his pain points? What's keeping him up at night? And what then can you showcase that gets into Steve's world? So I think the biggest challenge is healthcare staffing is incredibly noisy. It's incredibly difficult to break through to facilities because those people are moving at 100 miles an hour and they don't have time for your phone call throughout the day. They're busy saving lives. They don't want to take your call. And they're not going to take your cold call. They're certainly not going to take it if you just walk into a healthcare facility and say, hey, I'd love to talk about staffing services. So for me, I would break it down in a couple of different ways. Let me back up. One, who's the target audience? Who are we actively going after? Make that list. Write it down. Who are the facilities? Within those facilities, who are the targets? Once we identify the targets, what do they care about? What are their challenges? What are their pain points? Get so specific into who these people are that you can then create marketing messaging that is directed to them and talks about those pain points and talks about those challenges. And then it's about putting together a piece of a marketing plan that surrounds those individuals, right? If we think about what we call the AIDA model, awareness, interest, desire, and action, everyone like Matt, unfortunately, wants action right away. They want the order. The industry operates with that pyramid completely upside down. I need an order today. So I want you, Steve, can you get me an order? Hey, you got any staffing needs? I'd love to help. The challenge with that, you haven't earned my attention. You certainly haven't earned my interest. I have no desire in working with you. So why would I take action? So we need to think about, okay, target audience, pain points, all of that, and then work the AIDA model. How do we captivate the individual in that healthcare practice? How do we captivate their attention? How do I laser in on their interests so that they are now interested in me and have the desire to work with me, where ultimately they then take action?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think when you apply that then to social media, right? Into the content, it's the content then that you're creating that follows what you just talked about.
Right. And what's interesting there is I haven't even started talking about social yet. So what does the social messaging then become? We can't just think about social. Social doesn't matter. Direct mail doesn't matter. Email marketing doesn't matter. Text messaging, automation, none of that matters if you haven't fixed this first. We need to know who we're speaking to so crystal clear that then everything else just sort of falls into place. I'll say this was a really good exercise that I did for the National Lacrosse League a little while ago. Everyone knows, if you're a listener to the show, that I also work in NLL. We sat down and we wrote out who our target individual on the other end of social media is, so that when we create a tweet, we create a Facebook post, it has to be geared towards that person. And if that person would engage with it, then we press post. If it's something that person wouldn't want, this well-crafted person that we put together, don't hit send. But we need to know the target audience and their pain points before we think about any of the marketing, because otherwise you're just posting nonsense.
Right. Yeah, and that's exactly right. So people don't think of social media as a whole as this audience or that audience needs this message and that message, and this is who we are, and this is how we want to be able to speak to each of those different audiences. And so when I'm putting out content and I'm just posting jobs, yes, that's not going to resonate with hiring managers. It's not going to resonate with facilities that are needing my assistance. And so what kind of content are we producing? Does it relate to what it is that we feel like our clients want to see? If it doesn't, then we need to figure out what that is, what kind of content needs to be produced. And not only that, then what channels it needs to be produced on. And so, you look at LinkedIn as an obvious choice, but even a slight differentiation on where that's coming from. What is it coming from, the company page, or is it coming from a stakeholders page? So if it's more client focused, and if you've traditionally had content for candidates on your company page and that more candidates and job seekers are engaging there, it may make sense to say, okay, let's, after we find out who our voice is from a client perspective, what they're wanting to hear about and the type of content we're wanting to produce, let's say Brad Biley, who's my chief medical officer, LinkedIn page, and have that post and that piece of content come from him. Yeah. And then tag the company in that, because his audience is going to be those engaged clients, whether they're prospects or people that we've worked with in the past, that are going to see that and engage in that. Then that brings them to my organization. And so thinking about how that comes across and what channels, there may just be a slight deviation in who you send it from, whether it's a company or stakeholder, that can change the way that you're now able to engage or catch that attention of that prospect or of that existing client. And so, that's something that comes to mind when something that can be done, or at least attempted to try, of saying you have all those other things covered that you talked about, post it from somebody else in your company to be able to get new eyes on it.
Yeah, I'm on two waves. The first goes back to identifying who your messaging is for, right? And I'm thinking specifically about fitness clothing. Gymshark serves an audience. Under Armour and Nike serve an audience. Walmart and Target serve an audience. Reebok serves an audience. Asics, because I just bought new shoes, serves an audience. They know their lane though, and they know the messaging that they need for those lanes. It's very, very specific. And if we stay in our lane and we know our audience, we know our target audience, we know them so well, then the marketing just falls into place because we know what those people want to receive. Right. How you wrap it, you can figure that out. Social, we can talk about that all day, but we have to figure this part out first. Yeah. And we have to get it right. Matt, just to give you a couple ideas here, because I do want to add some quick hitting value. When I think healthcare, I purposely go to, I quickly go to quick hitting, video, infographic, visual, something that's directly super, super quick and gives me a good takeaway right away. But then I also go to well thought out, researched articles and content that no one else is going to have. And if we're working in a staffing space, we know more about the healthcare employee than anybody else. So somebody who is making a hiring decision in a hospital or medical facility would want to come to us for that information because no one else has that information. So what is it that you have in working with hundreds or thousands of people in the medical space that you've learned throughout the interview process, that you have sort of those trade insight that you could then put together into a well-polished resource? Because that's the type of content I think people want. That we've talked about Alex Hormozi in the past. That's one of one content or one of zero content that just no one else can put together because it only fundamentally exists to you and your journey and you and your research.
Yeah. So I actually started out in healthcare staffing. So that's where my first job was. A little bit different, home health. It was home health. But so when my role was to staff the nurses in those home health cases. And nobody knew those nurses like us or the team that was intimately involved in staffing their cases, because I'd call them and I know what struggle they were going on with their daughter or why they were sick or what was going on with their schedule. I knew everything about that and about them. And so that perspective that you're talking about, that kind of that unique perspective on what a firm can have on the pulse of an employee within a healthcare facility on whatever facet of healthcare that is something that you can offer insights to from your client's perspective that nobody else can, like you're saying. Yes. So even interviewing your recruiters, who are those that are talking with those employees and
Yes.
and those individuals that you are putting to work or helping to place within those organizations, and getting their perspective on what clients should be looking at or prospective clients should be looking for, and having that conversation and using that to be able to create content around and educating that client. That's a cool angle to me. It's something that if I'm an employer, I want to know what that nurse, if again, using nurses, what that nurse is thinking, so that way I can create an environment that better allows them to want, or better equips them for wanting to come to work and educate them on why they should come to work for me. And if you have that pulse as a staffing firm, then you understand that you can find me those types of people and be able to supply me with better candidates or better employees.
I mean, think about the culture of a sports team, right? There are great athletes that leave a team that go on to win championships somewhere else because just the culture isn't the right fit. I mean, people in Buffalo kill me for saying this, but Jack Eichel, right, was terrible in Buffalo because the culture wasn't a good fit. Went to Vegas and won himself a cup. Good for him, right? It was just the wrong fit at the wrong time, right? I guess the wrong fit at the right time. So we need to think about all that. And I think that's where staffing has a huge impact is, Matt, you have inside information that no one else has, and you can provide one of one or one of zero content that is fundamentally not being created anywhere else. And that's the type of content that is going to speak to this audience. But first, you have to get the other things right. You need to know your target audience. You need to know everything about them so that then everything else falls into place. Because if you get that wrong, nothing else matters. Absolutely nothing else matters. And that could be as minute as making sure the pictures are right. Yeah. Do the people that you're talking to, can they see themselves in the social imagery that you're creating? And if you're placing nurses, drastic extreme, and your social graphics have welders on them, well, then your target audience can't see themselves working with you and they're automatically turned off. So now we can narrow that in a little bit, but are you all the way down to the imagery in the copy, in the verbiage, in the messaging you're using? Is it so ingrained into what these people do that they have to work with you because of that? Steve, good show, buddy. I think that's a good one. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we're good to go.
That's our show. And thank you for listening to another episode of InSights. If you found this episode valuable, we'd love to know. You message Brad or Steve on LinkedIn and let us know what you're thinking. If you have a question for us, you can tweet us at Haley Marketing or send us an email at info@haleymarketing.com. And of course, if you need a hand with your marketing or recruitment marketing initiatives, we would love to help. You again, message info@haleymarketing.com and be sure you tell them that InSights sent you. For Steve Gibson, I'm Brad Biley. See you next time.